Board members, let's move on to agenda item 11. This is the general consent calendar. So are there items to be pulled from the consent calendar? Okay. Just take a few seconds here to allow board members to quickly review and scan. Member Earl, if you want to begin.
Yeah, contract 7. I just had a question related to it. So it's the Prevent Child Abuse Utah one.
Contract 7. This is agenda item. We'll call that 11.1.7.
That's great.
Okay. Any other board members that would like to pull anything? I'm not seeing any. Member Bogus, are you still reviewing or? Okay.
Thank you for checking with me.
Sure. Yeah. Are there any motions for the items that were not pulled? Do we have anybody willing to make a motion?
I want to pull 11.4. Sorry.
Member Bogus has a request to pull 11.4. This is the fiscal year 2025 child nutrition. Is that correct? Or are you looking at contract 4?
Child nutrition.
Okay, so 11.4. 11.1.4? No, 11.4. Okay, so we've got 11.1.7 and 11.4 pulled. Again, requesting any additional or motions for the unpulled items. Member Booth.
I move that we approve all of the consent items that have not been pulled, whatever they may be.
The motion is to approve all remaining consent items. Do we have a second? There's a second. Seeing no lights, let's go ahead and vote. That passes 10 in favor, 3 opposed. Those opposed being Member Carey, Member Bogus, and Member Green. And we had questions. We'll begin with Member Earl for your pulled item 11.1.7, the 7th contract. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I know we've reviewed the curriculums, we've approved curriculums, right, for this particular item, and it goes over the course of 5 years, right? That's why it's $5 million. It's $1 million each that the legislature is funded. Depending on the funding from the legislature will depend on the expansion or lack thereof. My question is there part of their measurement tool coming back to validate their work that they're doing consists of a survey they ask the students? I just want to know, do we have staff who will help confirm that or be aware? Can someone just validate that that survey is going to stay within, right, we're not asking kids things we shouldn't be asking, and the way we ask those is just thoughtfully done. And I don't know whether that needs to come to a committee or our staff can just do it, but I just have questions on that.
Yeah, and that's directed towards staff. Tanya, please.
Thank you. Tanya Alvarez, I'm the coordinator for prevention. So it says survey, but it's more of a comprehensive check and retention of the message check. And just to provide a little bit of context for the board, PCAU conducts follow-up surveys on one classroom each 2nd, 4th, and 6th grade at 10 selected schools statewide. Surveys are administered 3 months after initial instruction. Surveys are sent via forms with physical copies available. Responses are anonymous, containing no names or identifiable information. And the surveys ask comprehensive-based questions. It's 5 questions total, so you know. Who owns your body? Do you remember your 5 trusted adults? Questions like that. And then the results are only reported in aggregate. And it's mostly to help ensure that their training is effective, We also had data privacy add specificity regarding student surveys are accompanying data protection requirements will be determined during the planning phase, and the survey questions will be negotiated with the data privacy team.
Does that answer your question, Member Earl, or do you have a follow-up?
No, I just want to make sure that staff are following up on that and it's staying within the law and that we're careful and it's just, okay.
Yeah, and I just want to just jump in real quick. I see Member Longacre, I'll get there. I just want to express my appreciation to staff to responding, not to just the directives that the board has given, but to the conversations that we've had surrounding some of these issues. So I appreciate that movement in that direction. So Member Longacre.
Yeah, question for you through the board, if you don't mind. I was reading this and there was a couple of red flags, if I can go over them. So you said that there were 5 questions. They listed 2, and I wonder why we couldn't just get all 5. I think who owned your body? To ask that to a 3rd grader, that doesn't sit well with me. The surveys are through Google Forms. I'm wondering how confidential that is. They said that there was a paper option. I would opt for the paper option. They also said that the parent consent forms are in English and Spanish. There's many other language throughout the state that parents speak. So how can you get consent if it's not in their native language? And then also, how easy is it for parents to see the curriculum? Do they have to go to the district? Do they have to have a login? Do they have to sign any papers? Or can they look at the curriculum from the comfort of their own home? And that was it.
My answer, Chair. All right, as far as the curriculum goes, looking at the curriculum, it is in the statute that that it's available for parents to look at. And I'm not sure the method. I'm not sure if they can look at it from the comfort of their own home. I do believe that they have to go to the school to look at the curriculum, but they do have the ability to do that. Another question, you got to remind me of your questions.
Also like to see what the other 3 questions are. They only listed 2 of the 5. And then the consent forms being only in English and Spanish.
So I am not sure about other languages. I'll have to follow up with Prevent Child Abuse Utah about that. I will tell you that we have the ability to translate into any other languages that the LEA might request. And so we could work with them on that. And I just wanted to reiterate, and thanks Katie for coming up, that the questions will be looked at very closely, and Katie can speak more to that.
Thank you, Chair. Katie Chalice, Director of Privacy. Some of the questions you brought up regarding the survey questions and the methodology, in particular the Google Forms, were questions that we also had, the Student Data Privacy team. And so we asked that the language be added that we could coordinate during the planning phases to make sure that we get everything on the up and up there. So just know that that's front of mind for us as well. And I feel confident that we can represent the will of the board in addressing those 2 particular items.
And can you share with us the remaining questions that are asked if there's only 5?
I think it might be different for every grade because they're done at a grade level, and also it's to cover the concepts that are covered in the instruction. So the question that's asked that you were quoting is asked because it's covered in the material, and so they're asking the question on the survey to make sure that the student retains and understands that information. So it's who owns your body, should we ever keep an uh-oh feeling secret? Do you remember your 5 trusted adults? And those are the only ones that I've gotten so far, so I'll have to follow up on the rest.
Thank you. Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. So last night I attended a local school board event, and one of the teachers who teaches in the district, I believe it was her nephew, a few weeks ago committed suicide, and she said how I believe they accessed an AI program through their school-issued Chromebook. I believe that was how the student started engaging with AI. And AI, in responses to his feelings about suicide and sharing these feelings, didn't suggest at one time to call for help. And so my question is, like, this goes off what Member Longacre said. These forms are filled out by students. I imagine that if we're using a Google form, what happens to that aggregate data? So this really isn't privacy per se, because I get it, that's aggregate. Setting aside for a moment the argument that even disaggregated data can be linked to a student with AI, but putting that aside, what assurance do we have that this data isn't being used to train AI, educate AI by Google or any other third party? Chair.
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. Thanks for the question. In our contract language with this vendor, there's an assurance that the data will be used only for the purpose of administering the services. In this case, the administration of the service is providing the curriculum to the students. So if the organization went beyond that, that would be a breach of contract. Certainly, using the data to train AI would be a really clear violation of that. There's nothing in this contract that would allow them to do that.
Thank you, Chair. And I know last time we had talked about amending the contracts moving forward to include a provision that would specifically require the recipient of the data to give us the assurance that it has been destroyed by filling out an affidavit or signing. Where do we stand with that, and is that provision included in this particular contract? Thank you, Chair.
I am excited to announce that some of so that particular provision is not included in this contract, but there's a reason. As staff, we decided that we felt that because this was a good product that was going to be used in schools, that the LEAs and the state board should maintain the discretion about when the data were destroyed. And so we felt that it would make sense for us to maintain that right rather than them automatically destroying the data in the same way that we wrote for some researchers, for example. In that case, it felt clear we don't want them to wait for us. In this case, staff made the judgment call that we did feel that we wanted them to wait. So that's included. And then I'll also note that so that's not included here, sorry, to clarify. But some of the language that we discussed in previous contracts is included here, including the requirement to use multi-factor authentication to prevent undisclosed access. So thank you to the board members who contributed to that.
Okay. Thank you. I've got Member Bogus. Oh, Tanya, did you have a comment on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. The other two questions were sent.
Member Longacre. Hold on. No, you're not in trouble. She's going to share those other two questions. Yeah, you are in trouble for talking to Joe. You're not in trouble for talking. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. The other two questions are, what are the 5 types of abuse you learned about? And then what's the best way to report abuse? And I do want to also provide some context that the reason they do the surveys is because in the RFP, we asked those that were submitting to be able to measure the effectiveness of their instruction and to provide us with a method for doing that. And this is the way that they chose to do that.
Thank you. Member Bogus.
Thank you. So I have just a couple questions. We talked about the contract doesn't allow them to do certain things with data. So how do we know whether or not they're doing those certain things? And what is the consequence if they don't abide by the contract? What's the legal ramification of that? Do we get our money back? Little facetious, I know. But I'm trying to make my point is.
Yeah, I can't speak to the money back part. I don't know the answer to that actually, but I can say it would be a breach of contract. So at a minimum, we could terminate our contract. There is also thus far unused provision in statute that allows someone who had a third party who has access to student data in Utah who knowingly or recklessly discloses that data to face a penalty from the state board and to be basically banned from use in the state. Again, that's not happened to my knowledge, but that is in the library of options that the board could consider in the event of a misuse of data. Oh, but to answer your first question, we don't, unless we did, some type of audit on the vendor, we would not have evidence. We're trusting on them to comply with the contract.
Okay, I just have two more questions. Okay, the first one is, Google Forms is always identifiable on the back end. Even if it says you're anonymous, you're not really anonymous. That's not a thing. So I would take issue with the idea that Google Forms are submitted anonymously. That's not really a thing. That can't really happen. And then my question is with regard to curriculum viewing. Am I incorrect that this is the curriculum that the board had to sign an NDA for? Am I thinking of two different things? Because there was a curriculum that we'd approved for sex trafficking and human trafficking, and we wouldn't even disclose it to the public, that we had to sign NDAs just to preview it as board members. And then we approved it without the public ever looking at it. And now we're flipping that on its head and saying, oh no, the public can view it. Then what is the purpose of the NDA on our end? I'm struggling to track with that.
There were multiple sets of materials, not just this material, that were submitted to the board for approval, and this is a very competitive arena and market. And part of the reason for having the board sign those NDAs is so as you are reviewing that materials, it can't be shared with other third parties. There was some talk of doing that in the past, and also it's this, we follow the same process in RIMS for this material as we follow for other material, because this material is copyrighted, and so it's not distributed to the general public per se. It's available for parents who request to look at it, but they can't make copies or things of that nature. So it's to protect the intellectual rights of the organization that's utilizing the material.
But, and I get that. May I one final question, Chair? I understand that. My question would be is, are we going to make these parents sign an NDA when they go to view this stuff?
No, they do not have to.
And then how do they address concerns if they can't take a picture or make a copy of it? How do they go through the grievance process if they're not allowed to say, hey, I found this and it's overtly objectionable? How do they grieve through that process if that's not allowed?
So the process would be that they that they opt their student out of the instruction, and then we have had cases in the past where they will bring those concerns to us, and then we will address those with the organization that has the approved material.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Member Brenton?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just would ask that in light of the sensitive nature of this material, I just think we need to make things easier for parents to view them rather than having to go to the school or the district because of copyright. I think student portals that are password protected or a parent portal, especially with curriculum like this, parents should be able to view it from home. Curriculum always used to come home with students in the form of textbooks. It was never hidden from parents, and I think it is so hard now. It's a huge burden to have to go sit at a school and review curriculum. We've got to make this easier for parents to see. And so specifically with this one, I would ask our vendors if we could get a waiver to make it password protected, but be able to log in from home so parents can go through this material with their students and review it. I think it would be really valuable.
Thank you. Member Longacre.
Thank you. Yeah, on page 15, it says surveys are sent via Google Forms with physical copies available as needed. Now, I would just opt for physical copies through the whole grades, and let's just get rid of Google Forms, because then we don't have to worry about data. There's no question.
I'm not sure, when I look at this, we're faced with saying, do we want this contract or not? I don't think we have and maybe we do have the ability to go back and say, this is what you're going to do in your curriculum. What am I missing here? Go ahead, Katie, please.
So typically, I think what you described there, Chair, is the case that it's sort of like the board approves it or they don't. But in this situation, we added some language. I'll just read it specifically to the scope of work. So it says specificity regarding student surveys and accompanying data protection requirements, including potentially the methodology for collecting the data, will be determined during the planning phase of this project and documented via an amendment to this agreement. And then it says additionally, survey questions will be negotiated with the USBE student data privacy team. So in this one instance where we did add that language, I think we kind of do have a chance to influence that. And to your point, Member Longacre, and to your point, Member Bogus, these are questions that the student data privacy team also shared. And I think we can get to a good place on those. And we intend to continue this conversation subject to the board's approval of the contract.
Member Earl?
So I think you answered that. I guess it's just looking for a secure data system, whether it's paper or whatever. Google might not be the most secure. I think we may be aware of that, but it sounds like you could work with that. So, okay.
Okay. Member Carey?
Thank you, Chair. I am, in light of what Member Bogus shared about Google Forms, and as I think, and I'm not a tech person, but as she said, if it's not possible to truly de-identify a Google form, and that is their primary intake process, is this survey truly anonymous?
It is uncommon for a survey to be truly anonymous. So I would argue that this is not truly anonymous. The bigger question to me is, how is the data, with that caveat in mind, how are the data being used on the back end? So is it appropriate for the vendor to have potentially identifying information? That's one question. A second question is it appropriate, or what is the vendor going to do with that information? That's a second question. I feel comfortable. I feel like the board, we could get to a spot where the board feels comfortable with the answer to both of those questions. But if the board does not feel comfortable with any data collection, then that's a separate issue altogether, if that makes any sense.
Can I ask a question to piggyback on that one? When, Member Carey, I see you have a follow-up. Can I jump in? Is that okay?
Please.
When they take these questions, we talked about Google knowing all, right? I can speak it and Google's listening right now. Right, but if I'm not logged in, is it more anonymous? Do we have I guess my question is, do our students log into something, or do they just get on Google Form as an anonymous feel, right? We've seen that on the drive, like anonymous otter, anonymous. What's the process for these students who are taking this survey?
Oh yeah, we do have an assurance that I don't think anyone is married to Google Forms. I think that was their original plan, but it sounds like they're like, oh, we don't have to do that, which again is okay. But to answer your question, yeah, if a student is signed in, then that obviously, or maybe not obviously. If a student is signed in, then there's the opportunity to collect the student's account that they're signed in. If they're not signed in, then there's opportunity to collect information such as IP addresses. Even absent all of those, there's just, in the case of some of these questions, for example, someone could infer information about an individual student. So the risk when it comes to data collection is pretty much never zero. But again, to me, the bigger question is what's happening after the data is collected, and is it collected in a safe system?
Thank you. Back to Member Carey as I interrupted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, thank you, Chair. I would just, And I appreciate Director Chalice, her candor by saying, look, we live in a world where is anything truly anonymous, and I appreciate that. My concern is that in this attachment B that I'm reading, the individual seeking to do the survey say responses are anonymous. And so like they go out there and brandish this in order to, I believe, help get a seal of approval. And so that's my concern about the anonymity. It's not so much that, yeah, you can get this piece and that piece, but I really don't know what they're able to get now. And so that's creating the uncertainty. I know there's something with the Google Chromebook. I'm not that familiar with it about if you have to log in to access these programs, but I worry that this just becomes a conduit for all this information. So if someone has information on that, it would be helpful. But I'm concerned just because I have no idea. Their definition of anonymous is different than my version or definition. So that's cause for concern for me. Thank you.
Member Longacre?
All three of my kids have Chromebooks, and before you can do anything, you open it up and you have to log in to access anything. So I don't know how things are not attached to them.
Thank you. That kind of helps answer my question. I don't know if that's true for your elementary school kids, right? Because they don't have Chromebooks, right? They have access to Chromebooks. And I know at my school, it's like a computer lab per class. So you never know which kid is necessarily assigned to it. But I hear from all these comments, I hear that that word, the A word, is not ever 100%. I've got Vice Chair Wood and then Member Bogus.
So when we went through this curriculum, the survey questions weren't part of our adoption. Were these added in after? I know there was some request maybe in the last month or two about these performance measures. How do we know contracts are going, that we're actually getting something out of it? Were these added in response to board member requests to have some form of measurement?
Yes, so when the RFP went out, one of the requirements we wrote into it is that the contractor would have a way to measure the effectiveness of their material. And again, this was the method. It's a pretty common method to measure the effectiveness of a material to see if retention of the concepts happen over time. And so this is the way that this contractor wrote in their proposal that they would measure the retention and the comprehension of the topics so that then they could report back to us that their training is effective.
So this was probably a new requirement for the RFP, right?
Correct.
Because it's not something I've seen in any of these contracts that we've looked at before. So this is kind of a new step. Well, we're going to make sure we have some outcomes.
This was us
and
trying.
This is our first iteration, sorry, but our first iteration of, okay, what does this mean? And this was the concern when this request came from board members, was when you want information back, you're asking for data. So we have to balance that out. Do we want performance measures? Do we want to know how something's working? Or do we want to protect data? And we have to figure out that balance.
Correct. And we also believe that we'll be having to report on these outcomes to the legislature as well. There is a high amount of interest in this area. And so this was our attempt at being able to gather that and be able to report it back to them.
Member Bogus?
Thank you, sir. I'm not certain to which one of you. I'll let you choose through the chair. If a student's data is compromised, will parents be informed? And how will that happen?
Yes, under the Student Data Protection Act, Utah Student Data Protection Act, schools are required to notify parents if they experience a data breach, a significant data breach, which I believe if the student's data were compromised, that would constitute a significant data breach. That requirement also exists under the Government Data Privacy Act. So that's a long way of saying, yes, they should be notified. They would be notified either by the school or potentially by us, where we hold the contract. We'd have to if it came to that point, we'd have to figure out how to handle that.
Member Earl?
So I just wanted to confirm, did you say just a few minutes ago that the entity would be willing to work with whatever needs to be so that it meets our privacy and that you can double check on that? So is that what I'm understanding? And because we wrote it into the law itself, or not the law, the RFP, that it allows us to have that engagement and that you're looking for something that would be secure for students. So, okay, thank you.
Sorry, this tablet's not working. So I don't see any of the lights. However, I don't see a motion either. So I'm not sure what the board would like to do. Member Earl, go ahead. Let me get go ahead.
With the assurance that we're going to work on that privacy component, I would move that we move this contract forward. I don't know what the title is. What title do I need to give it? The vendor is Prevent Child Abuse of Utah. Do I need to say more than that? Contract number or something?
No, I mean, we pulled 11.1.7. So
I would move 11 what?
Point
1.7 forward.
Okay, so the motion is to move 11.1.7, agenda item 11.1.7 forward. Do we have a second? We have a second. Do you want to speak to it, Member Earl?
Once again, I feel like we've added the provisions in there that cleanup is there. Maybe what we do is we ask that you maybe report back what actually happened. So the board knows that assurance is there and that privacy measures are there.
Okay, thank you. Member Carey.
Thank you, Chair. So is there a, if I may, to staff, is there a timeline or deadline that we are trying to meet? Because what I don't understand is if the vendor is giving indications that they will accommodate and they will meet our concerns, can't we do that first and then pass this? So is there a timeline or deadline that we are bouncing up against?
Yes, this bill passed in 2020 in the 2024 legislative session, and because of the way things have played out, we're already a year past the date that this should be implemented statewide. We're also up against being able to use the funding before the legislature wants to pull it back. So we would like to get this contract in place as soon as possible. So if the contract starts in December, then it will effectively you have to remember that it'll take some time for the vendor to be able to gear up so that they can provide these services statewide. So we're trying to provide them with enough time to be able to get some outcome data within this fiscal year.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bollinger.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And I think I just would like us to connect back to the purpose behind this. And I appreciate you bringing up the code or the law that it was connected to, because the reason why this came about is because 1 in 7 students or 1 in 7 kids is abused in the state of Utah. And this provides schools with an opportunity to train students so they can know when to report it, and then we can help those kids. It's really important that we address this issue, and I am very passionate about making sure these students get this training as soon as possible. They should have been getting it last year, and I definitely think that they need to have it this year. So I appreciate this and support the motion to move it forward.
So the motion is to move this agenda item this contract 11.1.7 forward. Seeing no additional lights, let's go ahead and vote. That passes 11 in favor, 3 opposed with 1 absent. Those opposed being Member Green, Member Longacre, and Member Bogus. Okay, so Member Bogus, you pulled 11.4. do you have questions on that, or is it just pulled? What would you like to do anything with that? Is there, okay. Is there a motion that a board member would like to make in regards to 11.4? This is the fiscal year 2025 Child Nutrition Non-Competitive Technology Innovation Grant. Member Vice Chair Bollinger.
I would like to make a motion to approve, let's see, that the board approve participation in the fiscal year 2025 Child Nutrition Non-Competitive Technology Innovation Grant.
Thank you. The motion is that the board approve participation in the fiscal year 2025 Child Nutrition Non-Competitive Technology Innovation Grant. Do we have a second? There's a second. Do you want to speak to that, Vice Chair Bollinger? Okay, thank you. No lights. Let's go ahead and vote. That passes 12 in favor, 1 abstention and 1 no vote. The abstention coming from Member Green, the no vote coming from Member Bogus.